Are you a tryhard?
Or is the thought of being cringe keeping you from trying hard at all?
Well, either way, we've got something for you today because we are sitting down with Alex Sujong Laughlin, the creator of Try Hard and expert at getting people to do hard things.
And we'll explore why you actually should be trying hard at work. Let's get into it. Kaila, we'll get into our conversation with Alex in just a minute, but first, what's your dream job?
Well, outside of running a small artisanal bakery in my neighborhood, I actually think that I have my dream job. I really love working at Morning Brew.
Okay, well, maybe you're living the dream, bread loaves aside, but that's not the case for everyone. What if you're feeling stuck in your current role, unsure how to pivot into something new, or worried you don't have the right experience?
Well, that's where Udemy comes in. With Udemy Career Accelerators, you can fast track into high-demand fields like data science or game development. They help you build job-ready skills so you can take the next step in your career.
Whether you're switching fields or leveling up where you are, Udemy makes learning practical, personalized, and built around your goals.
So check out udemy.com/personal-plan. That's Udemy, udemy.com/personal-plan, and use code PMLE14 for a free 14-day trial of Personal Plan, their annual learning subscription at checkout. That's udemy.com/personal-plan and code PMLE14 for your free trial.
Now let's get into our conversation with Alex.
So we are so excited to have Alex Sujong Laughlin on the pod. She is a writer and audio producer, co-owner of Defector Media, and creator of Try Hard. That is a lot of stuff that you're doing. Try Hard is a podcast that just recently came out. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So Try Hard is a show that I am hosting and producing with Defector and Radiotopia about people who are deciding on a skill that they want to learn or an experience they want to have, and I work with them to help them do it.
I mean, that sounds pretty amazing.
Give the audience like a scope of like the type of things people are selecting. Are these like, I want to learn a new language, I want to climb Mount Everest? Where do they run on the gamut?
Yeah, I mean, all of those things could be possible Try Hard episodes for sure. Basically, I reached out to a few people and I said, if you were forced to do a thing that you've always wanted to do, like, what is that thing? And so whatever came up for people is kind of what we did. So it's anything from, the first episode was a woman going to a group yoga class, fairly low stakes. I have another one where a woman learned how to ride a bike as an adult. Or there's an upcoming episode where somebody really wants to learn how to do a cartwheel. And so they take an adult gymnastics class.
Oh my gosh, that is so scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, I think that when I explain the show to people, their minds automatically go to these really big things. I want to learn a language. I want to do this like big, crazy
You're like,
thing.
Kyle, your examples were too big.
No. It's like people ask me that a lot. And I think that speaks to like how intimidating the idea of like trying a new thing is, that your mind goes to this really big dramatic change. And what I've found talking to people is that even something as small as going to a group yoga class for the first time when you're so scared of exercising in front of people, that, it's a $25 class, it's an hour of your life. It is not life-changing on the face of it. It doesn't sound crazy, but it has huge repercussions in your life if you start living in a way where you're like, I'm going to do that scary thing, actually.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's also one of those things where you build something up in your mind as something you can't do, or you're not that person.
Yes.
And then to try and like chip away at that mentality that you have is very, very scary and does like feel bigger than it might be perceived as, which is crazy.
Totally. Yeah. We had this episode with Erica Kasupinen, who won Survivor a couple of years ago, and she told this story about how, all her life she had this long dark hair with like straight across bangs, just like very natural, and she kept it because she thought that that's just what looked best on her. But one day she was like, you know what? I'm going to cut all my hair off. And she cut her hair into this short bob and dyed it purple. And she thought, like, when she went to work, that everyone's going to be like, oh, who is this? You're not allowed to do that. And she walked in and all of her colleagues were like, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Nice.
dope. Yeah.
Yeah. And like that's what like being a tryhard is most of the time, I feel like.
Yeah.
Is like for you, you're like, oh my God, I'm not allowed to do this. I can't believe I'm doing this. And for everybody else, it's like, oh, look at them trying that new thing.
Yeah. Like, oh, sick. That's not a hair color I like for myself, but that's amazing. Like, that's like the worst you could get.
Yeah. Like, great.
So to bring it to work, because obviously that's what we focus on.
Yeah.
I think that something we've been talking about a little bit more recently is this idea of vulnerability in the office or being a tryhard in the office is now considered not cool, or it's considered cringe to like care about your career. Do you agree with that as kind of the current, environment? And why do you think that's the case, if so?
Yeah. I mean, I think there are different strains of being vulnerable and being cringe and trying in the work context. For better or worse, I came up in the lean in girl boss generation. And so like from the beginning, I was like, okay, like we're hustling, we're making lists, we're working on Saturdays, we're doing all this stuff. And I think that, one strain of the judgment I think that a lot of people have of that kind of mentality it makes sense. And I think it comes from a good place of like, hey, don't give all of your heart and soul to your job for no reason, like be a full person outside of that. But I do think like, especially in younger generations, there's this like deep anxiety about being seen wanting to be something or being seen like trying to do a thing. And I think maybe that comes from, such early exposure to social media and like being perceived so completely, so frequently, and at such a young age. But yeah, I think that like it can really hold people back. Some of the biggest moves I've made in my career were also things that were deeply embarrassing at the time.
Yeah. And like personally, when I first heard the concept of try hard, I have called myself, I'd say for the past 2 years, like a recovering try hard.
Yeah.
And I have been like really trying to kind of break my relationship with like being maybe a perfectionist, being very externally motivated, very focused on the next step in my career, getting a promotion, getting a salary increase. And so as somebody who's been trying to release myself of the hell that is like being a try hard at work, it was interesting to see trying hard being like shown in a more positive light.
Yeah.
And my initial reaction was like, no, that's like, but it's bad, like you shouldn't be doing that. And I think it's the difference between like what you're kind of talking about and what I have been doing is like a lot of my try hard was because maybe I was trying to receive validation externally. And because that's the only way that I thought I could be successful. And this trying hard, like riding a bike, singing, maybe, or pursuing a different type of career versus what you're expected to be doing is a little bit more of the internal try hard, which I think is so much more scary and vulnerable because you're like, no, I'm trying hard because I want this thing, not like, I'm trying hard, but I need that promotion. Like otherwise my mom's not going to love me or whatever it is,
We're all thinking that deep down, like, please, mom, love me.
I just want my mommy to be proud.
I think school is maybe like a great example of how people think about achieving what they want to achieve or like being scared to try because they don't want to fail. Like Kaila said, she was a perfectionist. You were probably rocking A's.
Oh yeah. Like, I had a 3.89 GPA in
the fact
college.
you still know your GPA, exactly. Whereas like, I think me in high school, I was like, it was cooler to like not try, but get a B. Yeah. And it's like, I didn't even try and I almost beat you to the kids who got A's. Like that was like a really cool thing. But to me, I also had like a different story of what I had to like overcome in my mind. Like, I think a lot of people fear trying something because their identity is tied to the result, the outcome.
Yeah.
And if you never try to learn a language, you can't fail at learning a language.
Exactly.
If you never try to ride a bike as an adult, you can't fail. And so I do think that is like the fear is like you've built an identity up of like, no, I succeed. Well, if you go try to do something hard, you might not succeed. You're not comfortable with that. It actually restricts the things that you actually want to do.
Yeah. Effort is really vulnerable. And I think that like actually you are very likely to not succeed if you do a hard thing.
Yep.
But also, like, I really have come to believe that the things that I value the most in my life, the relationships, the job opportunities, the hobbies I have, are all on the other side of some kind of moment, whether it was big or small, where I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this, you know?
Yeah.
It is, I mean, not to drop some like psychological terms, although everyone knows these, and maybe this is my version of cringe. Like, I'm very earnest when I'm saying this. Like, it is really interesting, like the fixed versus the growth mindset,
Totally, yeah.
which is exactly what you're articulating, Alex. Like, I think that a lot of people in their career, that's what ends up holding people back is like, man, I really do want that promotion, but I would like have to learn how to do a financial model, and I've never done that before. And like, is it going to be embarrassing if I tell my boss I actually don't know how to do that?
Yeah.
Is it going to be embarrassing the first time I send something over and they're like, what the hell is this? This is all wrong. And so it actually just, it keeps you in this box of, I'm just going to keep doing what I know I'm good at, which is great, but you're never going to get new responsibilities or new opportunities because you're not going to know how to do them, and you're going to be too afraid to fail. And yeah, I just think that is one element that holds people back from pursuing new stuff at work.
But another thing that I think what you're saying is like effort is vulnerable.
Yeah.
But it's also that when you're looking at the other side and you're looking at the people who have succeeded and have, you know, your boss's boss's boss, like their success feels very effortless.
Yes.
Or like you're looking at somebody who's, you know, a really good, I don't know, like ice skater or something. You're like, wow, they're so good. Like
They're so talented. They must have been born with it.
exactly. Like I could never do a triple axel, or I don't know any of the terms, but they practice, you know, so much, and that part isn't visible.
Yeah.
And so I think when you're like, you know, I would love to go and, you know, sing karaoke. But everyone who sings karaoke is having a great time and like they're really good. And I don't know if I could do that. Like, oh yeah, well, all these people are taking singing lessons and practicing and whatever. Speaking specifically about that episode, I listened to it this morning. But like it feels like it's the two things. It's like you have to try, you have to be vulnerable and potentially fail. And also if everyone else who's doing it and succeeding looks like they're not trying at all, you're like, well, if I don't try at this thing, I do poorly.
Yeah.
So like it must mean that I'm not right for this career or path.
Can I tell a story?
Yes.
Please.
Okay. We're all here. We're in the biz, right? We're talking into microphones. Okay. So my first internship in audio, the only internship I ever had, was at a local public radio station in my college town. And I worked there for a whole semester. And one day, my boss, who was like the main guy who, you know, had the NPR voice and would like read all of the ad reads and stuff, he was like, hey, do you want to record some promos with me? You know, tonight at 6 on whatever the station is called, tonight at 7 on whatever, that we would just stick in between things. And I was like, because it was my dream to work in radio.
Yeah.
You know, podcasts were still really new at that time. Like there were only a handful. So I wanted to be on the radio. And I sat down in the studio and he gave me the script. He put the microphone in front of me just like this. And I start recording. And he was like, you sound like a little kid.
Oh, gosh.
And he took the mic from me and he recorded all of them himself. And I was 21 and I was like, oh, I don't have a voice for radio. I don't have a good voice. I can't do this. And so for several years, this was my dream, right? But for several years, I pivoted away and I did social media instead because I was like, you know, maybe I can work in audio in some ancillary capacity, but I am not going to be able to speak on mic because I don't have a good voice for radio.
Wow.
And it wasn't until years later that I was working with some really amazing people who there's kind of a whole movement within the audio world of people who yell all voices are radio voices. But I learned like, hey, there's actually exercises I can do to relax my throat and to breathe deeper and be more comfortable speaking on mic. And now, like, I literally do it all the time. I am doing it right now, and I feel fine about it. But, like, the the first steps that I took into like trying to speak on mic again, I was like, nobody wants to hear this. I have a bad voice, like, you know? And I think that's so common.
Yeah.
And look at you now. We're sending this
Look at me
episode to that
now.
former boss. Yeah, you have a great voice for radio.
Yeah. And we'll be right back after this. Okay, back to the show.
I think something you said here is really important too, which is it's not just about the effort you're putting forward, but how people respond and react to that effort.
Yeah.
That either helps you keep going or, in your case, like for years says, oh, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And I always hear like you ought to praise effort and not outcome because you're more in control of your effort. So that's how you get. Like, I'm thinking of babies because
That's a real new parenting thing.
Yeah. But like I think it's true for adults too. Like if you want someone to try something new, you can't be like, oh, that sucked. You have to say, you worked really hard at that, and that is what's cool, and you'll just keep getting better as you get more reps in.
Yeah, and that's not to say that like you should be giving empty praise to people.
Right.
But I know now that like if I had been sitting across from myself at 21 and heard the way that I was so nervous, and people, you know, listeners may or may not know this, but when you're nervous, your throat gets tight, the muscles in your throat get tight, your voice gets higher. Like you don't sound as natural.
Yeah.
And I could have given myself pointers, and I think that he probably knew those things too, and I don't know why he didn't share them with me.
Yeah, but also it's kind of like devastating to hear that the thing that got you back was like, oh, I can change how I'm being perceived.
Yeah.
And so the fact that it took one comment to like keep you away for years, and then the like thing that brought you back was like, oh, don't worry, we can fix that, is also like very sad to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, I will say like I still sound like myself, but it was, I think, in that situation, it was a combination of like his misogyny and also just me being very nervous and uncomfortable.
So I wonder if, looking back, like if you were him, what could you do to an employee or a direct reporter, like a coworker in that situation to kind of encourage trying hard and changing? That feels like really challenging.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do this a lot in my job, and I've done it for the last decade as a producer, which is, you know, you sit down with somebody who's new to hosting or new to reading a script, and you're like, hey, this is a really hard thing. I just want to put it out there. Like, what you are doing right now is performing yourself. And if you're reading a script, that's even harder because you have to sound natural, sound like you're not reading, but you are reading. And that's a skill that takes years. And I literally say this to people. I say, it took me years to learn how to do this, so don't expect to have it perfect immediately. And then I talk through, you know, ways to relax the body. We shake out our limbs. We take really deep breaths. We do some vocal warm-ups. And then we run through scripts together. And I will sometimes, you know, read it myself and to give them an example, you know, of like, oh, this is a way you could read it, or this is a way you could read it. But I think like letting them know that this is a thing that's going to take time to master and feel comfortable doing is really key.
Yeah, and I think that's really good advice for anyone, regardless of whether you're in podcasting or not. Like if you're trying to encourage somebody to learn a new skill, whether, you know, that's marketing or financial models or whatever, it's like, this is hard and it's okay to not figure it out on your first try. In fact, it took me a really long time. Yes, I'm a pro at financial models now, but like it took me, you know, my boss yelling at me over and over again for me to get it. Like, it's okay if you're not perfect at this.
Yeah.
I think that's very like motivating while still like correcting, which I think is way better.
Yeah. I mean, like speaking from a manager's perspective, it's like really, I think the hardest and most important work of a manager to take the lessons that you learned from bad experiences and to distill those lessons and share them in a way that doesn't cause harm moving forward.
So would you say that you're a try-hard yourself?
Oh my God. Yeah. No question.
So how has that impacted your career for better or worse?
I think mostly for better. But
like, I hope for better.
Yeah. look, I've worked at some really old school places. I've worked at some really legacy organizations, as they say. And I came in just like guns blazing with all kinds of ideas and projects ready to go. And the thing is, like, at a legacy newspaper, for example, there is a way that things are done. And that is how those places operate. You know, there are routes you have to take to get a project approved. There are people you have to talk to. There are people that you have to talk to the right way and the wrong way, you know. And I was really not graceful about that. Yeah. I didn't care. And I think that was like a fundamental mismatch of like my personality with the kind of place I was working. Because I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but I was just getting in there and making a mess and making people angry sometimes. I got into a little bit of trouble, but like I also pushed forward projects that I really believed in and that like really worked for me. The first podcast that I ever hosted in a like really professional capacity was for the Washington Post, and it was one of their first podcasts. It was before they had an audio team, and I just pitched it. I was like, hey, can I do this? And they're like, yeah, I guess so.
That's wild.
Yeah, and they should not have let me do that. But I'm really grateful.
I want to go back, Kaila. You talked about being earnest earlier, and like, is that cringe? Is it not cringe? I feel like you hear the word cringe now when it comes to like how people talk about their work more than I've ever heard it in the past. And to me, like, there's this spectrum on, you know, the left side of the spectrum is like a deep irony. Like everything, like you're not serious. Everything is like a bit ironic, and it's like you're too cool to care about your work or like let people know you care about your work.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, it's like you're so in love with your company. You have drank the Kool-Aid. This is the single best place. There's nothing wrong with it. I love this company so much. Where's the right place to be on that spectrum? Because it can be tough to navigate that.
Yeah. I am still trying to figure that out. I also think it's more than like a two-pronged thing. I think it's like a
3D.
I think it's a multi-dimensional like sphere of axes.
Infinite axes.
Yeah. That are just I don't know. My brain, like when I start to feel like I understand and like have figured out a like taxonomy of cringe, something will like pop in and I'm like, oh, that throws this whole thing into whack. You know, one thing that I think is happening here is that people can perceive when you're not being real to yourself, you know? And I think that that's part of where cringe comes from. That's not the only place where cringe comes from, but it's like, you can tell when someone's lying to themselves, either about how much they care or how much they don't care, you know? And I think like that's one axis. But I don't think that's the only one. Like, I also think about people who have, like, you know, there are people from my college who I'm, like, connected with on LinkedIn who post these, like, long essays about, like, B2B marketing that, like, clearly ChatGPT wrote. And I'm like, this is horrific. Yeah. And, like, as a person who identifies as a tryhard, as a person who is, like, pro-cringe generally, I'm like, that's cringe.
Yeah. But the thing is that, to me, is cringe because if it's clearly written like by AI, like that is not high effort. That's
like,
low effort.
It's like, and you don't care clearly about it.
Like you're just trying to check a box of posting.
It's like a misalignment between like your intent and the amount of effort put into it and like how sincere that is.
Yeah, it's sincerity, I think, is really important when you're trying to identify cringe. And I do know, like, I have been kind of on every part of that spectrum and every like corner of that sphere. And like there's times when I have been acting like not aligned with my values or my beliefs in terms of like where I wanted to be in my career, what jobs I think I should be doing. And like I wouldn't say necessarily that I was cringe because I was trying hard, but it was because it was like, for example, when I worked at a bank for my first 2 years of my career, and it was really hard. I had to try very, very hard, but that was the baseline expectation. and I was just so like unhappy with the work that I was doing. To me, that's cringe. But like, I don't know that other people would have perceived it at that time.
Yeah.
But now I'm looking back, I'm like, ugh, God, I can't believe I did that, you know?
Because you're like, I'm killing myself for this job I don't even want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I also feel like some ways like calling something cringe to me maybe is like a defensive move where, oh, like I wish I could be that like authentic and put myself out there, but I'm not comfortable yet. And instead of being like, how do I help myself get there? How do I get to that yoga class? How do I ride the bike? How do I have a difficult conversation at work? It's much easier to be like, that's just cringe. Like, I don't even want to do that.
Yeah.
And so I think you have to like analyze kind of where your like defenses are up a little bit.
Yeah, and why?
As a personal LinkedIn poster, I have to
Yes, but you don't use
I don't use ChatGPT. Like, yeah, some people definitely think it's cringe. I actually like doing it, which is why I do it.
Yeah.
And then when people are like, well, how should I post on LinkedIn? I'm like, well, if you don't want to do it, then just don't do it.
Yeah,
but I think
totally.
it's weirder when you like, someone clearly doesn't want to do it. They're using AI to do it anyway because I'm like, that to me is the cringe part.
Yeah.
Like you're lying to yourself almost. Like just do the things that authentically feel right for you.
I mean, yeah, sticking with LinkedIn posting, 'cause I think it's
Yes,
like a great concrete example
Yeah.
where like I think posting on LinkedIn, I'm like, I would never.
Yeah.
But like, who cares?
Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
cares what I think? Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And I think that like people sometimes get a little bit wrapped up in this fear of like any single person in the entire world considering them cringe. And it's like, if one person thinks you're cringe, then like sorry.
We're allowed to.
It's over.
It's fine.
Am I okay? It's fucking over.
Yeah.
It's so professional here, so I just assumed.
We'll beep it.
well,
Okay,
yeah, we'll
okay.
swear too.
Okay. You know, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that like many people think I'm cringe. And like I just don't care.
Yeah.
I just don't care. Like sometimes I care. I'm like, oh, I'm embarrassed because I was a little too earnest on that thing. But it's like, they're not living my life. Like at the end of my life, I don't want to look back and be like, dang, I wish I had like tried a little harder, you know, in my knitting, but I was worried because I thought it was cringe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I also feel like I have a tendency, and I've been trying to check it again a little bit more recently, where I could love something, and if I see a single comment from a random user 0753 or whatever that's like, ugh, this was awful, I'm like, shoot.
Yeah.
It was awful, and I didn't realize it.
Yeah.
That's so embarrassing of me to like love, Florence and the Machine or whatever, and now all of a sudden someone says she's bad actually, and now I have to hate her. Like, oh, this is the worst. And then I'm like, wait, no, I can like things. Like I'm allowed to.
Yeah. I think that's so much cooler to have your own opinion.
Yeah, and to be like, I don't care what other people necessarily think, but like personally, not to be too like inside baseball about podcasts, but like I was really nervous at the beginning of this podcast to even like say yes to doing it because I was so scared of being perceived publicly or being perceived at all. But most importantly, I didn't want anybody to like listen to what I'm saying and be like that's embarrassing,
Yeah.
And so it actually took me a really long time to be comfortable like in the tests and like saying yes to this because I was like, it's okay that other people perceive me like I'm allowed to exist.
Yeah.
And I think when we're talking about careers, like it is an actual like inhibiting factor. Like I do not want to be perceived by anybody in a negative light, and therefore I'm not going to do anything.
Yeah.
And so I'm really glad that I like got over that hump.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that like I still have to check myself very, very often about.
Kaila, I have a question for you. So I really appreciate the vulnerability. Like you almost didn't do this show.
Yeah.
Now we're a year and a half in. Like the show has been, successful.
Yeah.
There we go. And you're great at it. But to think it almost didn't happen, now you're on the other side of it. Are there, as you've gone on this journey, have there been things in your life where you're like, wow, this reminds me of when I almost didn't do the podcast and then I did it and it worked out wonderfully? Has it given you a new sense of confidence when you come up against other hard things? Because Alex, I also presume that when these people go to yoga or they ride a bike, it's not just about doing that. It's almost this like more meta model of the world, which is, oh, I can do the things that I was scared to
Yeah.
do, and it all turns out pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I wish the answer was yes. But like,
You're like, nah, still stuck in a box.
still stuck. But I haven't had that many like big challenges or like big steps beyond maybe like in my personal life, like getting married or like thinking about like starting a family. Like those are things that are upcoming. And so I haven't had to like reach those yet, but I could see it being like, well, this is something I've been really worried about. Like there's no need for me to worry as much because like I know I can figure it out. But yeah, I guess like in micro ways, like
Yeah.
it's given me more confidence.
Have you seen that with the people that you help do a hard thing on Try Hard? Like, and if you could walk us through maybe like the like mental steps people take as they're on this journey, I think that would just be really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, the first episode, Maddie Lipchansky, she told me when we were recording that she very nearly didn't go to that yoga class. She was like, I am maybe going to leave immediately. And she didn't. And, you know, she's not like a lifetime yogi now or, you know, anything like that. I don't even know that she's gone back to another one. But I have noticed that guests who have done the Try Hard experience, TM, have like gone on to try other things as well. So like one guest did her gymnastics class and then went on the next week to do a Pilates class because she had like a free credit for Pilates and she was terrified of Pilates. And she
Same.
was like, you know what?
It's so scary.
I look at those machines and
It
I'm
looks like
no.
prison torture.
Oh, I
like,
love the reformer. Oh my gosh, it's so fun. I highly recommend
Yeah.
it. But like, yeah, you won't know if you like it unless
Right.
you go.
yeah.
I think this is just a really good piece of advice for listeners, which is to have at least one quick story you can always go back to of a time where you were like, there's no way I can do this, but then you actually did. Like that's something I personally use when I have to go do a hard task that I've
Yeah.
never done before. I'm like, okay, I remember this feeling 15 years ago when I had to run like my first half marathon. I was like, there's no way I'm doing that. And I did it. Like the same can be true here. Like I can get through this and I'll get to the other side. I think having one of those concrete stories is very powerful.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, I think we've solved cringe, maybe? Are we? Nobody's cringe anymore?
No,
Everyone's
the YouTube
cringe?
comments now are going to be like,
Yeah,
Kayla's
no.
cringe.
Yeah, I know. I'm prepared
Be
mentally.
nice to us.
Yeah, remember, we have fragile egos. But thank you so much for coming on. And, you know, where can we find you and your podcast?
So I'm on Instagram at Alex Laughs, also Blue Sky. Podcast is called Try Hard, and it's on every podcast platform. And you can see my writing at defector.com.
Lovely.
I got to say, Alex Laughs is a perfect handle. Incredible.
It's amazing.
Thank you. I mean, speaking of cringe, like
No, that's
Great.
That's awesome. That's a big get.
I like made that handle when I was like a teenager. And
Yeah,
just
yeah.
never moved on.
It's like the middle
Perfect.
school emails, and you're like, guess I'm living with this one for the rest of my life.
exactly.
Yeah.
Let's roll the credits.
Let's do it.
Our producer is Michaela Heck,
Our technical director is Uchenna Wo.
and our president is Devin Emery.
This show is a production of Morning Brew.
Don't be cringe, y'all.